Hi guys, this is Erica from Gokce Capital. Now before I begin, be sure to click subscribe and turn on the notification bell. Scott Collin grew up on an arid farm. So when a big feedlot moved in next door and began draining water, he had to take it on. However, the David in this David versus Goliath story may not be who you think. But before we get to that, there are a few things you should know about feedlots in general. Let's begin. Number 1. What is a feedlot? A feedlot is a type of animal feeding operation used in intensive animal farming that is used to feed beef cattle, swine, horses, turkeys, and chickens prior to slaughter. In this video, we'll primarily focus on cattle feedlots. Number 2. What is the purpose of a feedlot? A feedlot is intended to increase the amount of fat gained by each animal as quickly as possible. When an animal is confined in a feedlot rather than grazing freely, they gain weight more quickly and efficiently. Number 3. Where are most cattle feedlots located? Most feedlots reside in West Texas, the Oklahoma Panhandle, western Kansas, Nebraska, and Colorado. Number 4. What are the pros of a feedlot? Primarily, feedlots are one of the most economical ways of finishing cattle. This is because cows are fed corn and grains rather than grass, which reduces food costs and also fattens cows faster. Overall, this means meat production is increased. And number 5, what are the cons of feedlots? The concern most often voiced is around animal welfare. The animals tend to be strictly confined, and on top of this, the diet of corn and grains is not suited for their digestive system, which increases rates of disease and requires the use of antibiotics. Furthermore, from a consumer health standpoint, feedlot meat is fattier than grass-fed meat, and some say of lower nutritional quality. There is also one additional very big downside to feedlots: their impact on nearby water supplies. Which brings me back to the story of Scott Collin and Easter Day ranches. Scott Collin was raised on a dryland wheat farm in eastern Washington and learned at a young age not to waste water. So when Easter Day Ranches proposed a new 30,000 head feedlot right next to his water-scarce farm, he took note. The cows on this feedlot would need nearly 1 million gallons of water a day, which, according to Collin's calculations, was the same amount of water that 20 dryland wheat farmers would use in 75 to 100 years. But what truly incensed Scott was the fact that Easter Day Ranches could pump more than half of this water without a permit. For under a 2005 Attorney General opinion, wells for watering livestock do not require a permit in Washington state. Fearing that the Easter Day feedlot and other industrial-scale operations that might follow it would dry up their wells for good, Scott and fellow farmers filed a quixotic lawsuit against the state, challenging this 2005 opinion. But, as it turns out, the Easter Day Goliath was fighting a battle of its own. Founded in 1958 by Irving Easterday, the family-operated enterprise had grown to a sweeping 18,000 acres under the reign of Irving's son and grandson. The farm was dominated by potatoes and onions, but along the way had grown to include Easter Day Ranches, a feedlot operation that finished cattle for Tyson Fresh Meats, one of the nation's largest meat distributors. In fact, by the end of 2020, Easter Day Ranches was producing 2% of the cattle supplied to Tyson. Yet, the Easter Day Ranch was not your classic picture of corporate greed. At its heart, a father-son partnership between Gail and his son Cody, the Easter Days were known as folks who treated their staff like equals. The duo were energetic, driven to better the farm, and always on the lookout for new opportunities. But it was more than old-fashioned industriousness that pushed Cody Easterday to rapidly expand his company's feedlot operation and use gallons of water in the process. For the feedlot game was fast becoming a near impossible one. By the time the Easterdays entered the finishing business, there were only 2 corporations operating near enough to their ranch to buy the Easterdays cattle. With little competition, these corporations, including Tyson, could lower prices on the cattle to pinch point levels. To offset such low prices, Tyson offered Cody a common deal. Tyson would front Cody the cash he needed to buy weaned calves and feed them, then buy the cattle back from Easterday once they were grown. On paper, this sounded like a good deal, except for the fact that Cody had to pay Tyson back the money he had borrowed, plus 4% interest. And because the beef market fluctuates widely, he never knew if he would break even. To make the mechanics of the operation work, Cody needed a lot of cattle. In short, he needed to grow and grow fast, which is how his 30,000 head of cattle came to threaten Scott Collins' water supply, and one family farm faced off against another in a battle they both would lose. In 2011, the Washington Supreme Court ruled against Scott, stating that the stock water exemption could remain, which allowed the Easterdays to access the water they needed to grow their feedlot operation. But even massive growth was not enough to save Cody, and to keep his ranch afloat, he made a big bet. The mechanics of Cody's scheme are complicated, but in short, ranchers with over 50,000 pounds of cattle can go to the Chicago Mercantile Exchange and bet on the future price of their beef through a vehicle called a futures contract. The profits from such bets can offset losses when cattle prices drop, but futures trading can also become extremely risky, especially when it veers into the realm of gambling. Such was the case with Cody. And in 2011, he recorded his first big loss. The next year, he lost more. So too in the following. In 2016, he lost yet another $6 million. And with the losses piling up, Cody told his employees to submit fake invoices to Tyson for cattle and feed he never bought. The move worked, at least for a time. Tyson paid, and Cody used the money to pay off his debts. But the next year, Cody lost again. So he invoiced Tyson for more non-existent cattle. Then he bet again, and again billed Tyson for the losses. It all came to a head in 2020 when Tyson finally grew suspicious and investigated Easterday Ranch. In the end, the Easterdays lost everything. The bulk of the ranch and farm were sold to Farmland Reserve, Inc., an arm of the LDS Church, and tragically, Gail perished in a car accident just prior to the farm's loss. So what to make of all of this? I'll leave it to you to determine what, if any, the larger takeaways are. Suffice it to say that when you follow the complex threads of the Easterday story, it may be too simple to cast the Eastern Washington's feedlot operators as the Goliath in the story of the region's water wars. But there is one thing that the courts have definitively blamed feedlots for: groundwater pollution. So, if you plan to buy land near a feedlot, perhaps check the area's water quantity and quality first. But what do you think? Do you have any stories about feedlots? Let us know in the comments. Did you like this video? You're going to love our Gokce Land Due Diligence program. We'll make you a land due diligence expert in just 7 days. Check it out at gokcecapital.com/glad. And while you're at our website, don't forget to explore our $1 down listings at gokcecapital.com/listings. Finally, don't hesitate to reach out. You can email, call, or text, and we will respond as soon as possible. So thank you for listening, and more to come.